we do something really stupid in this country. We all want our 401k plans and to be up. We want our stuff to be as cheap as we can get it. But then we offshore our stuff to maybe our greatest mortal enemy on the planet is China. I don't hate the Chinese people. My brother-in-law is a vice president of a wine company. He does a lot of work with them. These are great people. It's the government, right?
Right.
These people are our friends. And we've shipped our whole manufacturing base onto a communist country. It's terrifying. They went to the plant Sunday and a bunch of shit went down. And more than that's Charles, it's a problem. And he said, don't shut up. And they're having trouble getting employees. And Ford looked at it and said, well, Charlie, maybe we can make it. And he said, really was a novel idea. Why don't we start making our own people?
Right.
To bring them in, train them to be Ford men.
Yeah.
All right? I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's back where we kind of started this conversation.
So my full-time gig is We Create, which is a marketing agency focused on manufacturing.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how this whole thing started, is I just started to work with manufacturers. I'm pretty passionate about the topic, helping manufacturers grow. I'm convinced that manufacturing is the linchpin of our economy and what's going to make our country strong. And with what we've seen, declining in the manufacturing space from, people wanting to work in it to, just in general, the manufacturing capabilities of the U.S. moving overseas, it's a disturbing situation, and I think it's important that we fix it, which I thought, who better to talk about it than the tool and die guy, which...
Where did your passion for manufacturing come from?
It's a long story, and it's hard to even say exactly how it occurred, but so I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Got out of the Marines, got a master's degree in business. As I got out of that, kind of played around with some different ideas and met somebody in town here after I moved back to Erie that had started a web company that was kind of, I wouldn't say flailing, but just not really going anywhere. And he said, hey, Nick, you think you do sales for my web company? And I was like, sure. So did that for a little bit. And I said, listen, man, we need to find some good team members and really do this right. So we kind of went on the hunt, found some good guys. And some of our first customers were manufacturers. And I think actually the very first manufacturer that we worked with was Onyx Corporation. Mm-hmm. And so we worked with them, built a website, did some SEO work. And then I just started to look at manufacturing, and I saw a pretty big need from a marketing standpoint. Like a lot of these guys had websites that were 15 years old.
Yeah, they put it together with
their nephew or something
exactly.
like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, they were really relying on kind of that word of mouth, maybe some outside sales, trade shows. And over the past decade, we've really seen those techniques kind of decline in effectiveness. And really, as a big reason for that is that, people that move into procurement positions, the older guys are moving out, the younger guys are moving in. What are they used to doing? Googling. They're used to going online, finding what they're looking for. So it's really important that, these manufacturers are positioned in front of those individuals, those younger guys, and look good. If a younger guy goes to a website that was built in 1999,
and
with little flash animations,
it's got to work on your phone too.
Yeah, it's got to work on your phone. They're going to be like, this company, I'm not interested in working with.
Right.
So anyways, we really saw the need in the manufacturing space. So then I just got the opportunity to start doing tours of facilities, really learning about kind of the manufacturing space as a whole. And I just found it really fascinating, just learning about what, some of these guys make. One of my customers is PHB Corporation, and seeing how their parts are in Cummins engine and, KitchenAid mixers and just really, really cool things that are being made right here in Erie.
The die casting division.
Yeah, which nobody really knows about.
Well, when we get to it, I have a great story about PHB.
Okay.
And the die casting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've developed a good relationship with my manufacturing customers too, because I find that our worldviews are pretty similarly aligned, which isn't necessarily true of every industry you could work in. And
I agree.
When I can sit down and talk to any manufacturer and pretty much agree on things, and so I think that's cool. So yeah, it was just kind of a organic growth in my interest in manufacturing. So then, since then, I've done a lot of things. I've worked with the NTMA in an advisory role. I started a website called Tri-State Manufacturers Marketplace, which I think I discussed with you briefly. So yeah, anyways, I thought that it'd be great to have you on because you're a world celebrity.
Yeah, that's me.
Guest starring or being interviewed by CNN. What was the Australian network?
Channel 9.
Channel 9. What was the Chinese one?
The Chinese Global Television Network, I believe it's called.
Okay. And then Bloomberg. I mean, pretty cool stuff that they picked you out of the crowd, and which largely is because of your huge, I don't even know, you're an anomaly as a manufacturer. You're an anomaly. Just your interest in promoting yourself in a digital format. And
well, actually, the whole thing wasn't to promote myself. Was I 2010, I took a part in the inspection room to be inspected, and they failed it. It had an angle on it, and I said, "How did you check that angle?" And they showed me.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, did you use a sign bar?" And they said, "What's a sign bar?" Well, I'm not going to get into that now, but I came home with a set of gauge blocks and a sign bar, and I told my wife, "Just record this. You're not going to know what I'm talking about."
Right.
So I recorded this video on how to use a sign bar. Okay. So it sat there for 3 months on my channel. It had 100 views, 130. I forgot about it. Like 3 months later, I checked it. It had 11,000 views.
Holy cow!
I'm like, okay.
I'm gonna silence myself.
So what I ended up doing, it's a good idea.
I just thought about it.
2010, I actually jumped online and bought myself the website, the Tool and Die Guy.
Yeah.
That was available.
Yeah.
So then I started recording videos like nuts. I recorded over 500 in the end. And I decided, for me, the best way to do it was just make a membership site. Just charge access for that. So it did really well for many years now. And again, this is not bragging. This is just the way it was. Back in those days, I was one of the few guys in manufacturing that didn't have a problem with putting my face on the camera, explaining things, and being on YouTube.
Yep.
Well, now everybody's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of young guys out there, they're teaching. They got the tats. They're cool.
Mm-hmm.
And guys like that. Okay, they can relate to that. I get it. But that's how it all got started, was just for my frustration with because my part was right, by the way. You inspected it correctly. All right. So that's kind of how the Tool and Die guys did. But the funny part was when Bloomberg was looking for somebody to talk to in Erie, Pennsylvania about manufacturing. It's just so funny to me when you consider still it's a shell of what it used to be. There's some pretty big names still around here, and I won't drop the names here, but the fact that they found me, that just cracks me up.
It's probably because of your website, right?
Obviously, if you Google
Tool and Die guys in Pennsylvania.
well, especially Northwest Pennsylvania manufacturing.
Yeah.
I come up in a lot of organic searches because YouTube's Google related, and they love each other, and so that's how I was discovered by the international news media. Yeah. But it was actually, I was very proud of that. It was a really good feather in my cap to feel that I could speak for the industry a little bit. Yep. That's something I really am passionate about.
Yep. So, in terms of things you're passionate with relation to the entire industry, what do you think is the most important?
Right now, I am hell-bent on some training and apprenticeships, all right? And I actually brought this book in, if we look at it later or whatever, but this was my actual apprenticeship that started in 1980. And these are all the records that Anson Tools and Gauges kept for me. Okay. Every hour on each machine I spent, all my contracts with the state, all my grades, everything's in here, all right? How many hours I was supposed to spend on each machine, and they literally wrote it down every week. And at the end of the month, I got a report. Okay, they really did it right there. A lot of places didn't track the apprenticeships like they were supposed to. Right. They kind of saw apprentices as cheap labor. Yeah. And you kind of learned through osmosis. But Anson's, they were really good, and they're no longer around.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, were they Erie? Were they an Erie
Yes,
company?
they were. Okay. And you spin that whole story around to PHP. Now, do you know what PHP, the original name of PHP, really was?
I did know this. Let me think about this for a second. Something builders. I can't remember.
Parker White Metal.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a Parker White Metal company. So my uncle Eddie, he founded Kerner Tool and Die in like 1944.
Okay.
And his best friends are the Parker brothers.
Okay.
So Eddie built die-cast dies like crazy for them. My
Yeah.
dad was the general manager at Kerner Tool and Die, and they had about 60 tool makers. My uncle did very well for himself. He built Gospel Hill Golf Course.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to hang out at my Uncle Ed's house back in the 60s.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, golf carts, German Shepherds running around in ground swimming pool. The shop was right there. You go over to the shop. It was a beautiful setup. It started in a dairy barn, which ended up, my father dies in May of 69. My uncle dies 6 months later in December, 7 months later.
Wow.
My aunt sells the shop after a couple of years, and a lot of guys left. But one of the guys that left was one of the foremen that took my dad's place, Bill Hilbert. Okay, so Bill Hilbert worked for my father as an apprentice in the 50s.
Really? Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so Bill left and started Wright Precision.
Okay, I've heard that name. Yep.
And the other foreman, Joe Duska, he left and started Red Dog Industries.
Yep.
Fast forward throughout the years, Joe leaves Red Dog Industries and forms a plastic company. Can't recall the name of it right now. Kurt Duska runs it. Engineered Plastics, I believe, out in Lake City. And that's what he ends up doing. Well, Bill ends up doing pretty dang well, ends up absorbing the Red Dog name, okay, Red Dog Industries. And Bill ends up buying part of Parker White Metal, okay? So he ends up with a guy named Benson, who came up as, I guess, a floor sweeper, and these two end up with controlling the company. So PHB really stands for Partners Hilbert and Benson.
Okay.
The Parkers all passed away. All right. So talk about a full circle that you were at PHB.
Yeah.
The fun part, and they could correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things PHB I don't think has ever skipped a beat with the with their business model, and I believe it's because die casting is still a little bit of a black art. Were you able to see how they do that?
Yeah.
With
to some degree.
with the shot of CO2 or with nitrogen, that they have to shoot that into the dies before it hardens, right?
Right.
It's a interesting thing. So you got very few people that can do it.
Yep.
Number two, I believe the parts would be hard to ship from China, heavy.
Sure.
All right, so that worked out really well for them.
That's
all
a
right.
good point. Yeah.
Now I don't know. When I was in business back in the '90s, Red Dog, they had 100 tool makers, over 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
I walked through there a couple of years ago. Definitely not 100.
Oh no, and that's nothing against them. I'm just saying, when your best customers all decide to go to China, you're not going to compete.
Right.
You're just not going to compete. So the beginning of the end of the manufacturing as we know it, it wasn't NAFTA. I don't believe. I believe
it was when China joined the World Trade Organization.
That's exactly right, and that changed everything because they cheat.
Right.
They don't play by the rules. They cheat. They steal our patents. They just cheat. I would tell you, as far as the tool and die industry goes in the area, I cannot be a spokesman for it, but I know it's a shadow of what it was. But I would tell you that a lot of them survived because they partnered with a tool shop in China. Mm-hmm. So you come to me and say, I need this plastic mold, injection mold built for this bowl.
Right.
I would normally charge you a lot of steel there, some hours, $25,000, $35,000, whatever. I call my shop in China. How much? $3,500. Now, okay, so I charge you $15,000. So it gives me a cushion when it gets here, tune it up for you, make sure it's good.
Yeah.
The only problem I have with that scenario is, okay, I know a lot of the mold shops, because they hated tool makers, they always thought we charged too much. Okay, but who's going to fix that stuff? Or you just buy a new one when it wears out. Everything else in our life is disposable now, right?
Right.
Nothing lasts more than 10 years. Washer, dryer, refrigerator.
Yeah.
I guess if your mold that used to last, 1 million pieces, you get 300,000 out of it.
Right.
For $3,000, buy it. Just build another one.
Yeah.
rather than have somebody fix it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who's fixing it, is my point.
And they probably don't mind losing money on the mold anyways over there because they're just going to run their own parts on them
Well,
and sell them on Amazon.
Here's the best part, though. If I'm a shop that needs bringing these molds from China and they're kind of junk, so I have to put $20,000 into them to really make them run right, I can write that off. Repairs. Not too bad. So Americans, we do something really stupid in this country. We all want our 401k plans and to be up. We want our stuff to be as cheap as we can get it. But then we offshore our stuff to maybe our greatest mortal enemy on the planet is China. I don't hate the Chinese people. My brother-in-law is a vice president of a wine company. He does a lot of work with China. These are great people. It's the government, right? These people aren't our friends. And we've shipped our whole manufacturing base off to a communist country. It's terrifying. So I have strong opinions. You asked me my original question, though, is training. I'm really stuck on apprenticeships right now and how they work, and if they're being offered anymore. And I hear guests on the radio on Joel Natale's show, and I'll call in, and they're involved in something with manufacturing. I'd say, how do we start an apprenticeship? Well, the NWRC and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, I've got the book right here on how you do it. Here it is. This is it. So I don't know what happened. I actually went to the Erie County Technical School, Erie County Vocational Technical School, and I took tool and die drafting and design. And to this day, I love drawing, and I'm a pencil and pen nerd. All right, if there's a nice gel pen here, when I leave, you'll be like, "Where'd that pen go?" I know who took it.
I'm a big pen guy too.
The pen burglar.
we're a dying breed.
But back then, right? But back then, the Erie County Tech, we went 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Okay.
So you could really concentrate and really plow into your work, get a cadence, what the teacher's trying to teach you. Again, learning how to draw. Just drawing triangles for a week until your line quality was good and the triangles were sharp at the corner and you didn't overrun or you did not connect, right?
Right.
All those little things. I can't even imagine in this machine shop. You're a kid. I don't care how mechanically you're inclined. If you've never run a mill before and you don't know what an end mill or a drill is or a tap, you can learn all that, right? So then they switched to a week on and a week off. I'm like, wow, that's got to be hard to just kind of get started and off we go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The last I knew, they're doing half days.
Oh, wow.
Makes absolutely no sense. How do you set up a milling machine when you've never run one before and get it cleaned up and out of there at noon so the next kid can come in? And I don't even know how that could work. I don't know.
So the nuances of the actual training program, I mean, that's going to naturally mean a lot more to you than it does to me because I don't know that much about it. To me, the bigger problem is, how do we get the kids interested in the first place? When, like you said before, how much are they going to get paid? Like, how much are they going to be motivated to go through these programs and get into the trades when they know that their starting wage is going to be...
It's a tough situation. Back in those days, and I was so lucky to go through my apprenticeship when I did.
Yep.
The old ways were still being used, but the new ways were coming in. So I learned all the old stuff and then slid right into the new stuff, the CNC equipment. It was like cheating. All right? I mean, seriously, what you could do with a computerized machine. But I was so motivated. Back in those days, if you had your journeyman's card, it was a big deal. All right? We called it, you had to have your papers. Your papers, that's the first thing they would ask you when you applied for a
German
job.
officer.
Huh? Do you have your papers? And when I graduated from my apprenticeship after 4 years, 8,000 hours, okay, I got the most beautiful diploma certificate from the state of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Signed by the Secretary of Labor and Industry. That I am a certified journeyman tool and die maker in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, it's got the real gold seal on it. It's not some thing they put on a computer in 1980, right?
Right.
So it's awesome. And I have a contract right in this book that told me when I started and how much I was going to make every 6 months. So I knew where I was going to be at the end. There's no arguing about my wages. Now, every year or so, if you look through here, they'd issue an addendum, but they gave us a little cost of living raise. So let's say all those hourly, those every 6 months wages would go up 3% or whatever, but they'd send that to the state.
Okay.
The state would approve it, and I'd have all the letters back and forth in here because they wanted us to know what was going on. So it was, I knew what I was going to be making when I graduated.
Right.
So I had a goal. I was going to finish this thing up, be a certified journeyman tool and die maker in a great tool and die town, right, and know what I'm making.
Right.
All right. So now, my humble opinion, we've spooked an entire generation of young people from manufacturing. They've watched their uncles, their dads get laid off, their shops close.
Yeah.
Okay. It used to be, and this is again my opinion, and people are like, my kid, he doesn't want to work in a dirty shop. Unless you're working in some sort of a forge or something, shops aren't dirty anymore. I mean, I know they're probably out there.
There's a couple.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen them.
For the most part.
Right. But the manufacturing's not dirty anymore. And I have thoughts on that whole process. But they gotta convince these kids that you're going to be something when you're done. You're going to be certified at something. What that is, I don't know. I don't really think. Now, my apprenticeship was 4 years, but tool and die making, they wanted us to be able to experience everything in the shop. So when I was putting together a $200,000 mold at midnight and a shaft needed 1,000s taken off of it to make it fit, I knew if that was going on the grinder. I knew if that was going on the lathe. I knew because I had done it.
Right.
So they wanted us to have a wide scope of knowledge over the whole thing. I would tell you, historically, tool and die makers aren't the greatest machinists. They're good, but they weren't trained as a machinist. They were trained to run different machines, understand how they work, make good parts, of course. But the joke would be, they're slow because they're meticulous. They want it to be right. Right. Machining world's totally different, right?
Yeah, because if you screw up a mold, that's big.
Exactly,
If
it's
you
a
screw
big
up
problem.
Part,
yes, exactly. Nobody wants scrap parts, but so probably nowadays, even if you were going to be, if there is such a thing as a tool and die maker, I remember when I used to tell people, I go to the doctor's office, they'd say occupation, I'd say tool and die maker. Okay, now I say that. I always ask them, when's the last time you heard this? They've never heard that. They never heard it. Isn't that amazing? And this was a huge tool and die town. And nobody even knows what a tool and die maker even is anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe we really don't need a 4-year program anymore. A lot of things have been automated, but I would say a 2-year program would probably be good to get the kids through the lathe department, the mill department, the quality department, maybe the shipping department for a couple months. See how we pack this stuff.
Yep.
I think, and again, I need to look at this. I got to be very careful what I say here. Apparently, where I work, we had an apprenticeship, and we don't now, and I'm not sure why we don't.
Yeah, I know. I think the NTMA is really the spearhead of the tool and die apprenticeship program in the area. I don't know if you know too much about their program.
And I'll get some information when I leave from you about that, because
Yeah.
I don't even know for my own edification. I mean, I could take this on, and at my age now, I would love to be more involved with that aspect.
Yeah, you're a trainer. You love
I love the history of the trade. I love the training. I love bringing kids up. But there used to be, I had to take an aptitude test to even get a job at Anson Tools and Gauges to see if I had any mechanical aptitude whatsoever.
Right.
All right. I don't think we're worried about that. We're so desperate for bodies.
Right.
We're bringing guys in. Now, don't forget, back in the '70s, we were all fixing our own cars. We couldn't, and you could. All right. So we were all familiar with wrenches and basic mechanics.
Yep.
Again, I don't want to use the term kids nowadays, but the truth is, I don't think a lot of kids do a lot of mechanical work.
No.
All right. So
Minecraft.
Yeah. So trying to get people in, I still believe, and I know there are people that would argue with me because the machinery is so much better now. But yes, you could bring somebody in with very little experience. If you're going to run 40,000 parts, set them up on this machine, teach them how to run. You use a few measuring tools to keep track of it. Probably be fine.
Yeah.
All right. But if you want a precision machinist,
that you can, after a couple of years, hand something to and know he or she can do this with a minimal of supervision. I mean, if you've got a question, please ask. But, and that even takes maybe the program, that's the point. Even after you graduate from a 2-year program, you're going to take another 2 or 3 years to even get proficient, really,
right,
at what you're doing. And I felt like my 7th year in the trade was when I felt totally confident. They could hand me a set of blueprints, 16-week project, injection mold, and I could oversee it, build it, and do that with confidence. Right. That was 7 years, and I was a madman. I went to night school for things I didn't need to take. I learned how to weld, which really came in handy when I started my shop. Saved myself a lot of money with that.
But I think you're completely right about the fact that we did kind of burn a generation, their impression of manufacturing, a manufacturing job. And I think the stability is the biggest thing, because when you can look at, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but Michigan, the auto industry, when China joined the World Trade Organization, the number of manufacturing jobs in Michigan, in a specific area, went from over 100,000 to 20,000. And it was like overnight. Mm-hmm. So when you make moves like that, is your investment, because that's what a degree is, that's what certification is, it's an investment. Is that investment going to pay off? And so we would need, number one, to figure out some way to stabilize the manufacturing space and to know that it's going to grow in some linear fashion. Number one, which I think the tariffs could very well do that.
It's going to take time, though.
It's going to take time.
You can't onshore those shops in a couple months.
Correct. But then you still have a long period of education.
Absolutely.
Before that actually turns into, okay, now we have the employees to fulfill this need, and and then you still have the pay problem. Are these kids willing to...
To be clear, what we're talking about here, though, is, in manufacturing in general, there are so many facets of it. There will always be room for people, as I mentioned, to come in and, be trained on how to do a task on an assembly line, or run a CNC machine that, you just load the parts in, hit go, pull the parts back. I'm talking about a trade, though, which I think most kids, when they hear about manufacturing, they want to make some money.
Right.
You want to be good at this something. You want to get to your A game. You want to be that guy at the shop, right? So that's going to take a little time, but you need to know that there's a plan for you. Mm-hmm. I can move up in this company. One of my biggest things I've really seen, which is a shame, back in the 60s, until 2000, most shops, the vice president, the engineer, they all came from the floor and worked their way up.
Right.
Now, to me, that's a beautiful system, because you've got guys that know your work. Mm-hmm. You put them in front of a drafting board, they know exactly what that guy needs now. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be perfect? No designer is, but they were going to be really good.
Right.
Former tool makers make great designers, all right? Also, former tool makers make great salesmen. Mm-hmm. They know how to talk to Motorola and how we build our dies, and they can speak that language, That doesn't happen very much anymore. Mm-hmm. The guys from the shop floor are the guys on the shop floor, and the guys in the office are the guys in the office, all right? I don't like it. I think it really stunts the ambition for young people on the shop floor to say, wow, they do promote. Mm-hmm. People do retire, and they do move guys in, and I would like to do that someday, right? Mm-hmm. And you might not get there till you're 35 or 40, but that's a nice time to switch into it, though.
Right.
Time to get off your feet. But I can't speak for every shop in town. But as it stands now, like I see a lot of our drawings are and I won't name the name of the company, but I can tell by the names on the drawing who signed it or made it. They're from India. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of companies are outsourcing their engineering. Now, we've got all these Penn State graduates and MIT graduates. I mean, all these people in the United States with engineering degrees, but we do it in India.
Yeah. Okay?
So, again, back to manufacturing. Is it a viable option for a young person to get into? And I've really done a lot of soul searching on this, but if I had one of my nephews come up to me and say, Uncle Phil, I want to do this. By the way, I do make them call me Uncle Phil. None of this Phil
I
stuff.
still call my uncles uncle. Yeah.
I'd explain that to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're okay. They do it. But I was thinking about doing this. And I'd say, listen, you're not going to go wrong learning to work with your hands. Okay? You're probably not going to make a lot of money at it. But if you want to do this for a couple of years and at least have this on your resume that you've worked in a shop and are familiar with lathes and mills and grinders, whatever. But I wouldn't recommend a young person get into manufacturing right now. And I'm the tool and die guy. That breaks my heart to say that.
Yeah.
But it's a global economy right now, and my experience has been the guys who have done pretty well in manufacturing. Now I'm not talking about GE, Wabtec, Toyota. I'm talking about some local places, right?
Yep.
They're a shadow of what they were, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not to disparage them, and their customers all left too, and they've hung on. They made a lot of money for a long time and managed to save it. And they got these big facilities now that used to have 200 people in them now, and they've got 12.
Right.
All right, but they made enough money, I guess they can do that. But it's pretty lonely. I see it. I just see it. I just feel like there's not this care for the trade. There's this need to get bodies in, get parts out the door, and not nurture the talent.
Yeah, I mean, because they're trying to compete on cost.
And I totally get it. It's a chicken and egg thing, but I'm going to retire someday. I just turned 65 in February. I mean, so I can leave now. I have trained 0 people to take my place. That's going to be a half a century of knowledge that's going to walk out that door that day.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I started the Tool and Die Guy site, was just to share what I had inside of me. I'm like, did I really learn a trade that nobody wants? Did I really do this?
Which I think is awesome. And I think, honestly, more companies need to take that model, what you did there, and do that inside of their own companies.
Here's the problem. There's 2 problems with that. Number one, you gotta make the commitment to these people, and you've also got to put somebody. You've got to pick out people that belong with you, not just because they applied and can show up for work most of the time. Make them take an aptitude test. Let's get some good people.
Right.
And sure, put your curriculum together. And here's what works for our shop. And I believe in 3 months of some hands-on training around the shop, you could familiarize somebody good enough. They get a little certificate that they completed, our 3-month thing. Make them feel good, like they got something. Bump them up a buck an hour or 2 when they get it done or whatever.
Right.
And okay, now they got something. And I know what the argument is, and I don't know how to solve it. I don't want to train people for them to leave as soon as they get their certificate.
Yeah, my dad was a small business contractor, so I heard that story my whole life too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there used to be so many apprenticeships around. We all stole each other's.
Sure.
If I lost an apprentice, I ended up hiring somebody else that graduated from an apprenticeship somewhere else.
Right.
So, I tried to take really good care of my guys when they graduated. I didn't want to lose them. I just, really, and I let my apprentices really roam free.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some really talented kids, and they were really good because I let them make mistakes, and I didn't freak out and scream and throw stuff across the shop when they blew it, right?
Right.
So I raised a really good generation of mold makers for a little while. That I had.
So you had your own shop,
and I was certified to offer apprenticeships also.
What years did you have your shop?
91 through 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just the economic situation.
Yeah, right. All my customers. One of my biggest clients back then was Little Tykes Toys.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And Little Tykes got bought out by Rubbermaid.
Mm-hmm.
Then Rubbermaid got out by Newell Office Products. And Newell Office Products basically consisted of 4 accountants in a high-rise in downtown Chicago. All right, just bean pushers, So, the Rubbermaid at that time had a 1 million square foot facility in Worcester, Ohio. It's closed.
Mm-hmm.
1 million square feet. I mean, how does that happen, right? And then Little Tykes, the toy industry is fun because you're not dealing with super precise stuff.
Right.
All right? It's all going to fit together and look nice, but nobody's going to, if the eyeball is 0.2 of an inch out, nobody cares, right?
Right.
So so you learn to do that to compete. You're cheap. You learn to, you know how to do this. So, I know, because I built so many of those inexpensive molds. I was shocked, like when I would do another line of work for somebody, and I'd say, well, based on what I usually do this for. I remember I had another shop say, how much to build this ice cube tray mold for Rubbermaid. I didn't work with Rubbermaid, and of course it was top shelf mold. And everything. If that was a toy mold, I would have probably charged $35,000, and they said, can you do it for like $125? Right. So my point is, I knew how to cut corners, and at the end, Little Tice came to me, and they said, how much for this mold, and I bid on it. I think I was like 19. I said, I need to work. Let's go down to 16.9, whatever. They got my competition in China was 3,500, and I had that much in the steel. All right, what do you do? So I didn't have to go bankrupt or anything. I just quietly sold everything off, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you been with ISM ever since? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 20 years.
Wow.
It'll be 20 years in October. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know too much about ISM, but I know that they're successful. I mean,
Yes.
I saw a little bit of the facility.
1967. Jim Murkowski Sr. founded it, and then his 3 kids are all there. Charlie, this one son, is basically the vice president of manufacturing. Jim Jr. is the vice president sales, and then the daughter Ann, she is the controller.
Okay.
So it's a very tight knit, family run business. They've been very successful, and we do so much. We do robotic welding. We do powder coating. We've like 4 facilities. We've been snapping up buildings.
Fully integrated, yeah.
Buying up buildings in that neighborhood. So yes, we do a lot of different work over there.
Yep.
Just contract machining. That's I still think our bread and butter, but assembly work. It's pretty.
Military.
No.
No government stuff.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually when I see machining operations get that size, a lot of times it is government contracting kind of stuff. But yeah, also, so does ISM do any of their own product? Any stuff that they sell?
A few small things.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's an interesting concept there. And this isn't, if anybody from ISM ever hears this, I would never be presumptuous enough to say what they should or should not be doing. They've been very successful. But, it seems to me like if you can figure out a product and you have a facility like that, boy, then everything just becomes easier.
I preach that all the time.
You know what? You can schedule.
Yep.
You can put things in inventory a little bit,
Yep.
But when you set up a machine, you can, you don't have to change things out for a customer needs something right now. It's just
and then you can compete on price too, because
we have everything
direct to market.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little surprised that because they're really smart about what they do over there. They've done really well, and I don't know if maybe they are working on something that I don't know about.
Yep.
But you look at Erie's Magnetics, you look at Lord's. $1 billion companies that.
Yeah, and just thinking of like even some of my customers.
You want to hear something sick though? Probably 10 years ago, I asked for a small magnet for I have a little crane over my machine, and we don't do like molds, so I don't need a 10,000. So they got me a 300-pound lifting magnet from Erie's Magnetics. So it's about 6 inches long, and it's 3 inches square, like the nice orange paint, Erie's Magnetics, and right under that, made in China. Almost made me sick to my stomach to see Erie's Magnetics, that great logo. I live on that side of town, so I drive by there at night. It's all backlit.
Yep.
Erie looks like a 1960s Mad Men
Yep.
ad, right? And nothing against if you're listening, if you work for Erie's Magnetics, I get it. You got to do what you got to do. But it just was like, really, Erie's Magnetics, made in China.
Yeah.
Ugh, just not cool.
Yeah. Well, the tariffs have to be a solution, because if they can dump their products here super cheap, the natural result of that is our jobs go in there. That's going to happen. So the only way to do it is to have reciprocal tariffs. I don't see another solution. But yeah, then you run into the problem of employment and can you fill these roles?
That's my biggest problem with the whole deal. I've got these 2 books. Years ago, I was down at my mother-in-law's office, and she's got a lot of books. And I was, why do you have a book on Henry Ford? She said, oh, my college roommate wrote it.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So Henry Ford, the reluctant capitalist. Now, everybody knows basically the story of Henry Ford, right?
I know a little bit more detail than that they try to hide out of the history books.
Not a perfect man by any means, okay? But this book is so well written, and it was awesome. I still keep this by my bed, and I'll pick it up some nights and just read a chapter.
Yeah.
It was so well written.
Yeah.
And what a life. I mean, really. A lot of contradictions in his life. The Highland plant, when they built that, after they decided they were getting bigger, and one thing they forgot, they were building so many cars, they didn't put a parking lot for their employees because they forgot their employees were probably going to buy cars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And by the end of World War II, they were producing a bomber an hour. I think each bomber had 4 million parts, and they could spit out one an hour. No computers. Wow. So the guy running that, though, was a fellow named Charles Sorensen. This brings me back to the whole training thing. I try not to go on. I'm older, but I don't try to go off on tangents. My neighbor's grass, right? So, anyways, Charles Sorensen, his parents brought him over from Sweden.
Okay.
Okay, and he ends up working as a pattern maker, and he ends up at the Ford Motor Company with Henry Ford and several partners back then, the Dodge brothers. I did not know this, but anyways, I decided to find this book, My 40 Years at Ford, by Charles Sorensen. Mm-hmm. Hard to find. I paid like almost $40 for this paperback, okay, because I wanted to hear his side of it. It's fun to read. First thing I learned is Henry Ford couldn't read blueprints.
Right. I remember that. Didn't they try to interview him and prove that he was an idiot? And he's like, I know enough to find the right person to do it. Right. I can't remember the quote, but
well, anyways, he, as a pattern maker, he would make the patterns for Mr. Ford to see in 3D what he was really looking at. Okay. So it's perfect marriage. So Sorensen's a smart guy. He's working his way up and basically becomes, Ford didn't like titles, but he was like the vice president of manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And he ends up being the one that builds the bomber plant, Willow Run. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that comes up with the systems to pretty much build these one an hour. All right. And then he writes this book in 1956. So this is an old book. So it's fun. But the reason I'm bringing that up is talk about a little bit of a history repeating itself over 100 years later. They had a little bit of a manufacturing crisis back then, too, because nobody knew how to do it. Mm-hmm. They had to find people and train them. So they had their own schools at Ford Motor Company to train you how to do your job. Now, if you were on the production line, maybe not so much, but I know Willow Run definitely to put together the bombers and the gun mounts, and they taught you how to do that. And there's no doubt in my mind, if you worked in the pattern shop or the tool shop, that you were definitely trained, right? Mm-hmm. They were doing, crazy, like 13 die changes an hour or something at that Willow Run plant. Wow.
It is always amazing to me to see the huge feats of engineering, mechanics, and things like that they were able to do with none of the stuff that we have today.
No computers, no calculators.
Yep.
Not even a calculator to calculate your die bends,
Did you ever tour that out in Sagertown? The name is slipping my mind, but he set up a machine shop that's like old school fashion. It's still got the pulleys and everything.
Okay, no, I've never seen that.
I can't remember what it's called. It'll come to me. But no, it was really cool to see how they used to run it. But you basically have these big, pulley systems across the top.
You'd hook to the pulley.
Central generator down in the basement.
I will say that was before my time.
Yeah.
And we were past that when I got in the trade. But so we were in the same boat these guys were. I'm not. You can see my fancy bookmark there. One day they went to the plant, and it was a Sunday, and a bunch of machines weren't running. And Ford asked Charles, "What's the problem?" And he said, "Nobody showed up, and we're having trouble getting employees." And Ford looked at him and says, "Well, Charlie, maybe you need to make your own." And he said that really was a novel idea. Why don't we start making our own people
Right.
to bring them in,
Yeah.
train them to be Ford men?
Yeah.
All right. I love that concept.
Yeah.
Then that's back where we kind of started this conversation, right? The apprenticeships. So I still haven't wrapped my head around it to fix it, if I could, because I'm not quite sure of what the problem is because I don't know enough about how we're doing it. I guess I need to find out what the tech school's doing. I know McDowell's got a pretty cool little program going out there right now.
Yep.
But it's and I say not as a criticism, but it's still not a manufacturing environment, right? Where there's deadlines to be made, and you've got to get these parts right, or you're going to get fired.
Right.
And that's part of school. I understand it. I still believe there's nothing like you walk into a company and it's just overwhelming, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to do a training program, the first thing I would do is have our sales department get a picture of 25 to 50 of our products and where they go on the part. We just see these things as these
Right.
parts. What's it even do?
Yep.
It says battery clamp. What battery? For who? For what?
I'm always shocked. I'm shocked to shit. So I walk through these manufacturing operations and I'm curious. I'm like, well, what is that going? Like, what is that for? I actually don't know. And I'm like, what? How do you not know? How can your curiosity? How can your mind handle
Years
that?
ago, I was at the GE plant in Grove City, and I was watching one of their engines being tested, and there was some of the stuff I built, and it made so much more sense to me to see it.
Which
So,
I agree.
I am 100% a guy about the overview. I like people to understand where we're going.
Yep.
Let me take you where we're going, then I'll show you how to get there.
Yep.
And like my wife and I are going to go to France this year, so
nice.
she's really hyping me up on the videos of where we're going.
Yeah.
So I have an understanding of what I'm going to experience, and then it gets more exciting to me. And I feel the same way. If I feel like if you're new employees, whether kids or adults, if the company took the time sometimes to give them an overview and say, this is what we do here.
Yep.
Okay. These are our best customers, and this is where some of our parts go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think any of our customers would have a problem with that.
No.
Because if it was explained to them right, this is why we're doing this.
Yep.
You're an important customer to us, and we want our employees to know, hey, that's important what you're working on.
Right.
That's going on this engine or this vehicle or this apparatus. And that's my first thing. Second thing I would do for any employee after I did that is give them an in-depth tour of the shop, all 4 facilities. Now they start to see, okay, this is where we do it, you're not going to learn how we do it yet, but now you're getting a grasp. You're not just in the corner all day testing pipes. The pipes get here, they go to the welder, they go here, they go there, and you end up testing them, and then they get painted and shipped.
Yeah.
I think the guy that's water testing the pipes would benefit from a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, knowing what's
of
the next step in the process,
exactly.
what's the previous step in the process.
Because we always have this line in manufacturing. The next person in line on that part is the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of parts get turned up and then they're sent to me. I'm the customer now. Then they leave me and they go to maybe somewhere else.
Right.
Powder coating. If I put scratches and dings all over my part, not thinking about my customer, the powder coating department,
Yeah.
they can't paint them because they're gonna look horrible.
Yeah,
They'll be
I like
painted
that
nicks.
concept, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a concept that needs to be taught.
Right.
So there's a lot. We're covering a lot of ground here, but I have a basic, idea in my head. But it doesn't have to be a 4-year apprenticeship. I could definitely put together an easy 2-year one, and even a 3-month for any employee.
Yeah. Just
Any company in Erie in manufacturing. I believe I had 3 months, and I'll tell you, I interviewed a fellow several years ago, a great guy, Dayton, Ohio, John Shirk. He owns a little gauge repair company.
Okay.
And he's a great guy. He's repaired some of my stuff. We met online through the Tool and Die Guy, whatever. I've never met him personally. But I interviewed him about how he got involved. Well, he worked in a tool shop for years. And the tool maker that taught him happened to be also a watchmaker.
Okay.
So he really...
very precise, right?
Yeah. But I said, John, how'd you get into this business, the trade? Well, I'll tell you how I got into trade. He says, when I was a teenager, he said, Dayton, Ohio. He said, one of my summer jobs was helping work for this company. And what we were doing is helping people that had we were very high end. They had copper gutters, and they needed cleaned or repaired, and we did that because back then copper gutters were around, right?
Yeah.
And tile roofs and things like that. And he says, well, one day they said meet us down at this building downtown. So it was like 14 stories or whatever, kind of probably like our Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I go there, and they said, go up to the 14th floor, and I'll show you what you're going to do. They go out to the clock and clean the pigeon poop off. I'm not doing it. I quit. I am not doing that. So he's going down the elevator. He says, my dad's going to kill me that I don't have this job. So he went to the newsstand, and just like we had here, the little newsstand at the bottom of the building, and he got want ads and saw somebody who was looking for an apprenticeship in a completely different part of town. He got on the bus, went over there, never been on that side of town before. The guy hired him. And he tells really fun stories. It's a good interview I did with him, just not for my part, but the stories.
Yeah.
Smart young guy owned this company, and they started their own school that was so successful, other shops were sending their kids there. They just got together as almost a co-op. Okay, now, I know there are people that are smarter than me, or think they are, that would say, that's what the tech school's for, that's what the night school's for, that's our co-op.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Because the right people, I talked to the person that was teaching machine shop at City Tech, and she had 10 or 12 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how many of these kids will go into it? Maybe 2.
What?
Yep. And I said, why? She said, most of them can't find a way to get to work. That was the answer I got. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just putting it. That's the answer I got. So are these kids really passionate about manufacturing, or is that's a class that was open and they learned how to run a lathe?
I think you find a way to get to work if you want to go to work.
Okay, so I think I drive a lot of people nuts because I love the stories. I'm walking around with Henry Ford books because there's lessons in here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of fun stories in here too. But
I related a story from Henry Ford at one point. I think it was Henry Ford. Tell me if this story sounds right. So he wanted to design the internal combustion engine, and he took it to his engineers, and they said, that's impossible. Can't be done. And he's like, well, figure it out. So he went back to them a month later. Where'd you get? It's impossible. We can't do it. We tried this, we tried that. He's like, figure it out. And so finally, the last visit, they figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
But he was that kind of guy that was like, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He had a vision in his head, and it was going to happen.
What Mr. Sorensen explains in this book very well, Henry Ford did not invent mass production. Okay, several people were involved in that. He gets credit for it, and he took the credit for it, and he liked the publicity.
Yep.
Now, Henry Ford did not get in anybody's way, encouraged them at all times because he knew what he wanted too. But he said that was a 10-year process from 1905 to 1915 where we finally got the conveyor belts, the timing, and everything to work that what everybody knows now as the modern assembly line.
Yep.
But that was not, Henry Ford didn't come out with a bunch of blueprints where they'd say, this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
He said it took us a long time.
Oh, I'm
Several people worked hard on that to get that to where it was.
Yep.
And that's a great thing to note that, again, that's what I think we're missing sometimes. There's so many people on the shop floor that do jobs that you need to respect their opinion. What do you think? Instead of saying, do that. Well, if we move this hole here and did these 2 operations, no, do this. Let's just do that. Do that. It's like, can you at least fake it and tell the guy, that's a good idea, let's try it next time?
Yeah.
Make him feel like his suggestion meant something.
Right.
All right? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, that's basic leadership stuff, too. I mean,
Well,
any employer, any boss
We might have
should
to
know
edit
that
some
kind
of this
stuff.
out because
Well, I don't think you specified who that guy was.
no, but my point
He
is
knows who he is, right?
Well, there's an old adage, and I ask HR people this all the time, and I've never heard one get the answer right. Where do you get your best people? You get your best people from your best people.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? You keep your best people happy, they'll sing your praise. Now, I will never say a bad word about the place I work as long as I'm taking a paycheck. That's
Sure.
it. Okay, 20 years been good to me, but there's a piece missing there that I still believe you got that 80-20 rule in any business, and there's 20% of those people you want happy, and they'll spread the gospel, about it. But unfortunately, like I said, we don't offer apprenticeships. I don't know what the future holds for that. I don't know if they just think we'll just keep running parts and they'll come out right every time, and you really don't need to know much to do this anymore because the machines do all the work. And I totally get that in certain environments. We are different. We do a lot of short runs, 5 parts, 8 parts, 2 parts, 100. It could be the same day. And so we're constantly switching out machines, setups.
Right.
There's only a handful of us there that know how to set up machines, and the rest of them are operators.
Yeah, that seems dangerous.
Well, they're good operators. They've been doing it
I
for
mean,
so long.
dangerous in terms of just the stability of the company. Like when you only have a handful of people that can do it, what's going to happen when they're gone, right?
And we're all my age.
Yeah.
Okay?
Very
You
scary.
think that's bad? Walk into a tool shop. They're saying the whole shop's my age.
Yeah.
Right? It's not good.
So, I mean, that sounds like it could be your next step in life here is helping companies put together their own sort of customized
Or helping the state get
apprenticeship.
their act together.
Yeah.
I've got to.
Which I'm a big, I'm kind of pushing that direction too, which so I have some meetings set up. I've already been meeting with Dan Laughlin. I've been meeting with Mike Kelly. And I'm pushing this idea kind of from the other direction of you, which yours is probably more important right now. But my argument is the companies that update their digital presence and get a new website, invest in SEO, things like that, we're generating 20, 30, 40, 50% growth in a year. And it gets them to the point where they're reliably getting new business in, where they were just kind of sporadically getting word of mouth referrals and whatnot before. So this is like a huge thing. Lake Erie Rubber, we started working with them shortly after he bought that company, and they weren't getting anything from the web. Now, you go in his lead form, he's getting leads almost every single day for rubber molding jobs. I mean, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars worth of growth because of that work. So my idea is, let's do this on a big scale for the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, our economy has been flat or shrinking for the past
20 years.
10, yeah. And it's like, why? We have the assets here. We have the product, which is manufacturing. Why aren't we growing it? Why isn't it getting better? And, it's kind of on these guys for not doing it themselves. But if they're not going to do it themselves, we all get the benefit if the GDP grows.
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't we pushing these concepts that work? And I think the big problem is a lot of people don't know that they reliably work. I can make the argument that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the case studies to prove it. So what I'm talking about is a way to scale this and as a state market our manufacturing sector and get these,
That's fascinating.
get these businesses,
Mm-hmm.
these OEMs
Mm-hmm.
that maybe don't want to move here, but maybe they want their entire supply chain in one place.
Right.
Meadville, I mean, you can get every type of manufacturing you could possibly want in Meadville. You can do
Still?
it in Erie.
Still?
There's a lot down there.
Okay. No, I didn't mean that sarcastically.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that we have a way to, in my numbers that I put together, I said we can double the manufacturing GDP in Pennsylvania in 5 years. We could double it, which is a big number.
And you've met with them on this?
I've met with Dan Laughlin. He really liked the plan that I had put together. He's trying to kind of push it to some, people higher up, and
Yeah. So that's your ladder you're going on, and then mine is the training part. They work hand in hand.
they do.
What I need to do, though, I feel like before I present to a Dan Laughlin, and my particular representative is Ryan Bizzaro, I need to find out exactly what I can right now about what training we've got. But obviously, there is a problem if nobody's offering it.
Right.
Why do I have to hunt for this? Why isn't there a sign saying, "Hey, want an apprenticeship? Go to this website, and here's the places in Erie that are offering it in construction, plumbing, electrical, and manufacturing.
Yep.
That would be easy, wouldn't it?
Sure.
And then I got 4 places I can call. I don't. It's bizarre, isn't it? So
It is.
It's like you just said, a one-stop shop for training. Like
And
you're gonna.
you need that. So you need the marketing, you need the training, but then you kind of have that further up the funnel need of marketing trades in general. I think to myself, we have these shows that my kid's watching. She's a 4-year-old, and you got Blippi and stuff like that, and they're going through, Toyland, all these weird things, and I'm like, and then there's all these cartoons that they watch, Paw Patrol and things like that. There should be a well put together cartoon kids show that starts to introduce kids to how fascinating it is to build things.
Right. Oh, I agree.
To make things from scratch and to, make the things that you use every day. How fascinating and cool is that? Mm-hmm. Start to get that in their minds. Start to get them thinking about it. And that way when they get to high school, then they're like, yeah, I could go for that. And then you start to build at that point the case that this is going to create a lot of stability for your future. But obviously we have to build that stability for the future.
Here's an interesting part, though, back to how the American people were completely hoodwinked by our experts, our government. And this is a very simple way to state what I said earlier. After I'd closed my shop, I was then walking around Walmart one day, and I think I needed a toy for a niece or nephew or something. I can't remember, but I was in the toy department. Now, the toy department anymore is a joke. Remember, the toy department used to be a wonderland, right? The Toys R Us and these giant places filled with toys, right?
Right.
But they had some Little Tykes toys. Now, Little Tykes took all their work, their molding, not their molding, but their injection mold making. Mm-hmm. They still do a lot of molding here, I think. They might do some finish assembly over there and ship the little Weeble cars with the people in here.
Right.
But they do some injection molding here still. But their the molds they had built by several of us in this tri-state area, and they were great to work with. And I already explained we were pretty inexpensive to get the work, but they were really good. We all made money. And I go into Walmart and I see this toy car I had built. And when I owned my shop, that toy car used to be $19 or something, right?
Yep.
And now they moved everything to China to save money, and that toy car is still $19. So we gave away all that work, all that great mold making work, manufacturing work, heavy manufacturing, to a communist country, so we could pay the same thing. So who made the money?
Yeah.
The Rubbermaid Newell Corporation.
It was short-term gratification.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the stockholders were happy because
Yep.
Rubbermaid Newell made the dividends that year. Or their stock went up.
Right.
So yay, but we don't have any jobs anymore, but at least we're paying the same as we used to. What?
And and that's exactly, that's a perfect explanation for this income gap that the left really likes to talk about, which I'm not denying exists. It certainly exists. You've got these ultra wealthy billionaire company owners that are making a lot of money because they're shipping all the stuff over to China. In the short term, the consumer's happy because they're getting a cheaper price, but then they're like, "Where's my job? Like, I don't have a job anymore."
And then you got these arrogant people that say, learn to code, whatever. I have something I've called for years now. I kind of came up with this. It's my gospel of manufacturing, and Erie, Pennsylvania, is a great example of this. This was such a great little manufacturing town. And I was explaining to my wife the other night because we were at dinner down at the Bay House. And I said, where our amphitheater is now, there used to be a dock.
Yeah.
And that dock would be filled with piles of iron ore and coal and stuff for our foundries.
Right.
All right. The freighters would come in, unload it. I'm not saying that's the greatest thing. Back then, I understand the bay was polluted and stuff, but I'm just saying, just that segment. Then it all goes up the street on tracks and all the little forges. And look at 12th Street, that whole corridor.
Yeah.
That whole corridor from Green Garden to East Avenue where it ends at GE.
Right.
10,000 guys working at GE. probably another 200 shops in town doing work for GE. Okay, to supply them, to keep their steel up, to keep their jitneys running. Okay, then you got all these little tool shops, great jobs, right? We're all working 55, 60 hours a week, all this overtime. Oh my gosh, I can afford a nice house. My wife doesn't even have to work. I've got a car, a boat. Okay, I'm not living large, but I'm living a nice life here, right? Got a great trade. Then, back as late as the 90s, if you wanted to join the Coqua Club in 1995, it was a 7-year wait if you want to be a golf member. $30,000 initiation. Okay? I had my shop. I joined Lakeshore. I paid $9,500 to get in that place. Initiation. No waiting list, though. Okay?
Right.
There's no. I mean, just tell you, there's no waiting list in either one, and I don't think there's an initiation fee. They always say we're gonna. If you join now, we'll skip your $1,000 initiation fee, right?
Right.
Then all the banks had all this money to lend because there's just so much heavy industry in these shops, and machinery is such a good investment because if you screw it up, there's another 100 shops that'll buy this thing for at least what's left on the loan. So it's a pretty safe bet. The banks are all members at the clubs. All the shops are sponsoring events at the Warner and the Philharmonic. I mean, I've got a list here, all those little specialty shops.
Yeah.
The little shops in town where you need industrial supply. Erie Industrial Supply, I bought my grinding wheels from there. August Industrial Supply, I bought a lot of stuff from them. They used to be down at the roundabout on Westlake Road. That's gone. Erie Industrial Supply, gone. James H. Cross, I could pick up the phone and say, I need 3 end mills this size. Can't do that anymore. Nothing against James H. Cross. Nobody stocks anything because the industry's so far down. Why do you want to get stuck with that inventory?
Right.
So we end up, I think, buying a lot of stuff from this big company called MSC. I think they're in Cleveland. They overnight a lot of stuff to us.
Yep.
But that's probably one of our biggest vendors. So, all that money that came into the community is all gone now. And when you have a good manufacturing base, everybody's got something to do. Kid needs a job in the summer, he can sweep floors. And guess what? He's watching that toolmaker. So what are you building? All of a sudden now his wheels start turning, right? There was always so much activity and money in a community that's building stuff. And you're buying electric, you're buying gas, you're buying steel, you're buying vehicles.
Yeah.
I had my little shop. I did $2 million in sales a year. Not a big number. The 1990s, not bad. But $2 million. Me and my partner would split up, a couple $100,000. I had a menial salary, it was decent. Where did that other $700,000 go? Wages,
Community,
insurance, steel,
Yep.
real estate taxes. Why do you think the city of Erie school district is broke? They have no money because they lost their entire base.
Right.
And everybody goes to the state and says, hey, can you help our school district? And I think they did, thankfully. But, we can't afford to put windows in our schools. I mean, it is a disaster, right? So I don't know. I hate to use the word hopeful. I will talk about this. I have fond memories of mold making and tool making and machining, my family in it. But even if you want to say, Trump's doing is the right thing, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
These companies can't just uproot and start building cars tomorrow in Detroit.
Right.
Moving entire assembly lines or setting them up takes years.
Yep.
And everything seems to take longer now than it used to.
Yeah.
They built that Willow Run plant for the bombers in 6 months. It's a mile long. 6 months.
Yeah, that would take years.
Yeah. So I don't know. Big permits, overregulation.
Yep.
That's another thing. We have 2 people at work that their whole job all day is compliance.
Yep.
One is OSHA compliance, okay? All day. That's her job. The other lady is our customers compliance. If this bottle cap is going to Pennsylvania, staying here, there's a couple things they want to know, but what's in that bottle cap? If it's going to California, that's 11 separate pages for that bottle cap to go to California. Is it going to hurt the whales? Is it going to pack the redwoods? What's your carbon footprint to get it here? I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah.
Okay? So, back in the days, when I started my shop, I started in 1990 on part-time. I bought a little machine, put it in a friend of mine's corner of a shop, and I'd work after work. I'd go over there and build these little dies for a company in Meadville. And, it was fun and everything. But then I started my tool and die shop. There was no compliance. I just had to be on time and build good parts.
Yep. I
I didn't get anything from my customers saying, what are you building this out of? And, How does an average guy now, even if you and I had said, let's take 150 each, and buy a CNC machine tonight. Okay, we'll set it up in my building. I have a little building with electric in it. Well, as soon as we incorporate, here we go, OSHA.
Well, that's the thing.
Compliance.
That's another reason why there's this consolidation of companies, and you've got these massive conglomerates, and all the little guys, go away because they're the only ones that can afford to do it. They're the only
Exactly.
ones that can afford to do compliance.
Maybe
Which
it's
I
unrelated.
can go on and on about
I know,
OSHA
and maybe it's unrelated. You talk about the beautiful example of that, COVID. I couldn't get my hair cut, okay? And our beauticians, they're barbers, they're licensed by the state of Pennsylvania. They have to have this code of ethics and cleanliness.
Yep.
However, I couldn't get my hair cut, but I could go to Walmart and Lowe's.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something? I couldn't get a loaf of bread at Art's Bakery.
Yep.
Right? All the little stores got shut down.
Yep.
I mean, look at what we lost. I mean, I used to love Office Max. Gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a shock. I drive by that big building.
I'm thankful Barnes and Nobles is still there.
I'm surprised because what was the one we did lose?
I was
up there?
worried about that. I thought that they would, because that's my spot. I love going over there on a Sunday, just sitting down reading a book.
But there, I don't know. Is Barnes and Noble exactly a little bookstore? I mean, that's a big
it's
deal.
It's a big change.
Yeah, they're a chain. So.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, over-regulation, and I mean, I bitch about OSHA nonstop because I know so many shops, just small businesses, $2 million a year, that they'll walk in the door, and when they walk in the door, it's going to cost you $10,000, $15,000. Mm-hmm. They're going to find something. We
actually have a partnership with them.
Yeah?
So we preempt any problems. We offer them to come in and inspect.
Okay.
So we have a safety committee that meets once a month, and they're very proactive. And we have to send those minutes, of course, to OSHA. And we have a list of things that we find and how we're fixing them. And so, again, we're big enough to do that, though.
Right.
We can afford to spend thousands of dollars a year on reports and compliance.
Right. Yep.
Safety's a good thing.
Yeah, safety's a good thing.
Right.
But, it can get excessive.
I'm running out of steam.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Any questions for me, or
No, I think we need to continue the conversation. I think the way that you're hitting the problem, the way that I'm hitting the problem, I'm going to bring up the things that you talked about when I have these conversations with the state, because I think if we can hit this from all three directions, you got the education direction. Well, you got two parts of education. You've got the getting kids interested in the first place, and then you've got the actual apprenticeship programs that are going to be necessary, and then you got the market.
For whatever reason, God gave me a really good speaking voice. My wife is a speech presentations coach, so she's taught me well.
Yep.
So I have no problem. Everybody's like, my wife was freaking out. She's like, CNN, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I've been in 500 videos. The camera doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And in a perfect world, I'd love to tell my story with a good video setup and do commercials.
Yeah.
And say, here's what this trade can do for you.
Yeah.
My name's Phil Kerner. My family's been in this for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right? We've never went hungry once. Okay, because I build stuff.
Yep.
And you might want to consider it a trade or a career in manufacturing. And here's what we can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have the age and the credibility to sell that message.
Yeah, and you do present well. I mean, I watched some of your videos.
Better. I've got better over the years. But.
Yeah, it does take some practice. I'm still probably a little rough around the edges.
I found out I know what my good side is.
Yeah.
Stuff out.
Yep. Well, hey, thanks a lot for coming on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.